banning local police from alerting ICE, from terrorists, from MS-13 gang members, from human traffickers. That is not compassion. That's actually negligence.
Virginia Republican leaders are blasting Arlington County after the board voted to ban local police from cooperating with ICE, including arrests of suspected gang members and human traffickers. For more on this, let's bring in the Republican nominee for Lieutenant Governor of Virginia, John Reid. John, welcome.
Yeah, thanks. I'm glad to see you, Mike.
Thanks for coming up from Richmond.
Yeah.
So what do you make of Arlington officials, limiting interactions with ICE?
I think it's insane. And I got to tell you, Republicans are united on this issue. And here's the secret. A lot of Democrats are agreeing with Republicans on this. I mean, it was one thing when Democrats tried to make the argument about, a 10-year-old little girl, should she be deported back to a country that she'd never been in or something like that. This is a totally different situation. Mm-hmm. Why are Democrats constantly defending criminals? We're not talking about the people who were working in a factory and, maybe they came to the country 10 years ago and they thought it was a different arrangement. We're talking about people who have actually committed crimes, and the Democrats continue to defend them. And in some cases where we're talking about, people who are apparently affiliated with gangs, I've lived in Northern Virginia. Mm-hmm. People are not going to go for that. They don't like it. They don't appreciate it. And there's criminal data that's stacking up that indicates that this is a reckless position.
The county board says the county will comply with federal law under all circumstances. Does that encourage you?
No, because I don't think they mean it. I think we've seen interview after interview where Democrat elected officials continue to hedge their bets or come right out and tell you, we're not interested in cooperating. Look, you can hate Donald Trump all you want. I'm just not going to argue with you about that, but you got to obey the law and you've got to protect your citizens. And that's one of the reasons that I'm running for lieutenant governor. Is I was in Richmond in 2020 when the riots were taking place. Everybody heard about Portland and Seattle and New York and you didn't hear about what was happening in Richmond. And I watched it firsthand and said, I'm not going to let my hometown and my home state be victimized by people who won't obey the law. We're never all going to agree. That's okay. Mm-hmm. I'm a big boy. We can have the discussion. We can have the debate, but we've got to obey the law. And Democrats have decided to heck with it. And this is such a fundamental issue that I think the average person actually understands and appreciates, and they know that it's a threat to their safety in their home, that I have no problem going across the state of Virginia, from Northern Virginia to Bristol down in Southwest, and to Norfolk and Virginia Beach. And I think the average person is going to go, you know what? We may disagree on some things, but this is something we're solid on.
Let's talk about your race. Yeah. So I've known you more than 30 years, since we were kid reporters in Waco, Texas.
Going back.
You made the jump from media, talk radio, you were a very successful host in Richmond, to running statewide. Yeah. What surprised you about this race?
Well, I'm not sure that there were any surprises. I knew it would be, high elbows, if not ugly, and it has certainly lived up to that reputation. The gentleman who was running against me dropped out, and now I'm the nominee, and there's some people who, there's a shakeout period here. But the reason that I left the radio station is because this is my home state, and I care about Virginia. And if you go to, johnreidforvirginia.com, you'll see things that I have written myself and a history of decades of standing up for conservative principles and, kind of coming under fire over and over again. And there's too much on the line this year. And I'm glad we've got the president here in Washington making very difficult, tough decisions. I mean, they're tough decisions when you're $36 trillion in debt.
Sure.
We need people to continue 4 more years of Republican leadership in Richmond so we don't lose our right to work, so that we have elected officials who will say, this is right and this is wrong. It's not based on my opinion. It's based on law and protecting the citizenry. And I feel like over the years that I was in media, I developed a reputation for being a reasonable, responsible, hopefully very fair person. And I'd like to take that into public office as well.
Virginia had become a blue state for a while there, and then Youngkin and company, your people you're running with, turned it around. Are you confident you can deliver in November and continue that trend?
Oh, I think the governor and Winsome Sears and Jason Miyares have done an amazing job. I think the Democrats have done a terrible job, and that's part of the problem for them, is that you put people in charge and then they got to deliver. Glenn Youngkin, Winsome Sears, Jason Miyares have delivered. The Democrats continue to push the limits. I mean, if I had been them, not that I'm into giving advice to Democrats, but I would have played my cards kind of close to my vest in January and February. They have come up with legislation after piece of legislation which really pushes the limits in Virginia. You would have thought that they would have learned that parents want to control how their children are educated and what they're taught. They want to know that they're their kids, not the government's kids. And I think the Democrats still didn't learn that harsh lesson even after Terry McAuliffe blew it 4 years ago. And I'm going to remind voters around Virginia about that.
John Reid, enjoy the campaign trail. We will follow your race.
Okay, I'm glad to see you on this side of the desk,
Love
Mike. Thank you.
Thank you.